As introduced, my name is Jim Fillerup, and I'm the director of the Southern Office of Aerospace Research and Development located down in Santiago, Chile. Up until about a year ago, we were a one-man office, and now we've doubled in size. We now have Brett Paukenis on board, and he's down there with me in manning the office. As far as a brief description of the portfolio, it's the same as the other ex-SOARDs. The AORD and EORD counterparts. We engage in Latin American research in collaboration with our program managers here at AFRL, and we do that in accordance with the broad agency announcement to make sure that we maintain Air Force relevance. The majority of what we do is, of course, with our program managers here and the basic focus on the Air Force Office of Scientific Research programs and initiatives. We also, however, support a good number of our program managers in our technical directorates. Because we're a regional office, we also respond to OSD and Southcom and SAF requests, and we are the only office that's actually located inside a U.S. embassy. Hence, the ambassador can also pull our string when he needs it. So that's kind of our portfolio. This is our area of responsibility, or our area we take from Mexico south. This is actually a map that I got for Latin America, and you'll notice a couple of countries there that aren't considered Latin American countries because of their political nature. Don't ask me why: Belize, Guyana, and Suriname. But anyway, they're still part of our area of region where we conduct work. Santiago, Chile is down south. What I mentioned here, there's basically four primary countries in which we work. First of all, Argentina, and I've listed their GDP ranking that I find. The population in their capital city, or their biggest city. This Sao Paulo is not their capital city, Brasilia is, but this is their biggest city. But you can kind of get a sense for the population, and of course Brazil is the biggest city, or the biggest country, has a huge city, and Chile is probably the smallest population with 18 million, Santiago about 5 million. And nevertheless, its size, it still has, I couldn't find a ranking. I had a difficult time finding a consistent ranking, but they do maintain the highest GPD per capita. And so they're fairly well off in that regard. During about a year ago, or less than a year ago, I read an article about Brazil, and they called the article "The Gusher of Research and Development in Brazil." And they actually used the word gusher, and one of the reasons is because they talked in the article about the investment that they're currently experiencing in their universities, their research and development institutions, from the government and from industry. And when Brett came on board, he took an approach where he took a good look at where the investment is, where the outside investment is, and where the money's coming in and what they're investing in, and see if he can't find some collaborations on matching for Air Force relevance topics to try to leverage some of these things. So one of the things that we've got here is Brazil, of course, is the #1 sugarcane producer. If you go to a gas station in Brazil, you'll have two pumps. One is sugarcane, one is petroleum. And so you have the choice. They have an industry which researches what they call flex cars, which is a car that'll burn both the oil that we're used to, the gasoline that from petroleum, and also from sugarcane. So you can put that in either cars. And they use materials and coatings that they research in order to develop it. They also, do a lot of production based on GPS. You drive through Brazil, and you'll see these sugarcane fields just like you're driving through Iowa and you see cornfields. And they use GPS to try to help harvest and to maximize their harvest, and of course they have the magnetic equator across there, which creates some of the turbulence in trying to establish GPS, and that And so that's an opportunity, which is one of the relevant Air Force needs that we're also interested in. They have a lot of natural minerals, Brazil does, and they receive, their industry also produces, invest a lot of research into their infrastructure and their technologies. They have Petrobras, which is a very large petroleum industry down there, and it pumps in a lot of money into their universities for research on their regard. So we're talking lots of money, and the Brazilian institutions are an emerging country in research and development. Go to our neighbors. We look here at Chile. Their economy is primarily based on copper. They export about 20% of the world's copper. If the copper industry is doing well, Chile's doing well. And right now, Chile's doing quite well. And they invest a great deal into their academics as well. Also in Latin America, they have the Andes. It's a dry climate, Peru, northern Chile, and it creates a superb area for astronomy, for radiology and radio observatories. And so these areas here also provide an excellent place. This is Catamarca down in Peru, which is one of the largest radio observatories in the world. Its advantage is that it's directly underneath the magnetic equator, and so it's unique in that regard, in its location. So we're trying to capitalize on the types of investments that's going on in Latin America, as well as the natural resources which are there. Back in May of 2011, there was a presentation given by the Honorable Limnios, and he gave kind of a perspective on Latin America and what he considered to be their primary areas of interest. He mentions Brazil. He talks about their energy. These are bullets directly off of his presentation. So energy, he looks at life sciences, aerospace, materials, nanoscience, information, and maritime situational awareness. I couldn't argue with any of those. These are the kinds of things that Brazil is good at. It's got a broad base, technical base. Colombia is a country that I didn't mention in the previous slide. It's a very strong ally with the U.S. and an important country with our military group. As far as basic research initiatives, it's not one of the key players, but it's an important ally of the U.S. And so he lists those types of materials, shipbuilding kinds of things, the things that are related to fighting the counter-drug activity that's going on. Chile, he lists modeling and simulation, information technology, shipbuilding. Of course, Chile's got a very large seacoast, so shipbuilding would be one. Argentina, Aerospace, I couldn't argue there. They have a facility there that produces satellites. They have collaborations with the Italians in producing a constellation. Cybersecurity, unmanned systems, those are kinds of things that, from a DoD perspective, are the countries and their talents. So where is AFOSR investing? So what I tried to do here is I tried to color code and put a dot for each of our projects to try to kind of see if you could kind of see a pattern on where the different technologies are and what's going on. If you look to the north, you'll see it's pretty much dominated by material sciences, and I could have sliced and diced these guys in different methods, but these are kind of the areas that I selected. And so you go to the north. Mexico is pretty much material science. They're very good at material sciences. They have a lot of other areas that they do, but this is where we have invested, and that's where we find the best research that complements the Air Force interest. If you look down here, you've got mathematics, and for some reason those look green in this particular graph, so you must have a color code difference. But anyway, mathematics and computer sciences, right down in here in Argentina. We have one in Uruguay, guy there from Stanford UCLA, moved down. He married a Uruguayan and moved to Uruguay, but he had a lot of came from UCLA and knew of AFOSR, and so we found a gold nugget there. But anyway, Argentina, many of you may know that they had an economic crisis in about 2003. They're good and theoretical, but they haven't built up their infrastructure in their universities yet to really do a lot of the experimental stuff. That is in progress. Space science, you see that in Peru, you see that in Chile, a little bit in Argentina, and over in Brazil. The physics area, again, Brazil, you can see lots of activity in Brazil in lots of different technical areas. So if I condense those dots down into just cities and locations, you can kind of see where we're at. And again, we have a good deal of collaboration up in Mexico. We have what we call a Mexican Research Initiative, and 4 of those sites are participating in that particular area. I've got another slide on that. Got to watch my time, though. And again, a good deal of activity in Brazil, and these are our institutions that we're currently working with. If you break it out into country and by the technical directorates that we have currently organized here at the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, you can see that aerospace, chemical, and material science is pretty much spread out among the countries, but again, Brazil dominates the number of projects that we have. Physics and electronics division, again, Brazil dominates in that area. And you get in mathematics, information, and life sciences, and you start seeing a little more of a scattering. And that's kind of the trends, but you can see by the country the number of projects, and again, Brazil is still our major partner and the major place where we invest our research. Just want to talk, with what time I have left, a few of the collaborations and the things that I find of interest. This particular photo here is the Leoncito site, or Casleo is what they call it, observatory near San Juan, Argentina. And we have connected ourselves with the project there. This is their whole facility. This is their 6-meter telescope, optical telescope. They're quite proud of it. It's their largest in Argentina, but the Brazilians have come in and purchased the equipment in this facility, which is the solar observatory. You've got the solar collector here, a hole where the sun shines in, and you can collect the solar image and process it inside. You have the radio telescope here of 120 and 145 gigahertz. And this little dot got moved somehow, but that's the facility that's here. And we have 2 radio meters that we installed back in November, which are part of the project that we're helping to fund. And these are 45 and 90 gigahertz. The thing that I want to point out in this particular view graph is the fact that the funding agencies that are associated with this one is FAPESP, which is the funding agency, kind of the NSF counterpart for the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil, just the state of Sao Paulo. And it probably has 60% of all the funding that the Brazilians invest. If you take all the S&T funds, FAPESP has about 60% of the funds. So it's a major player in the state of Brazil, in the whole country of Brazil, but it funds just the state of Sao Paulo. CNPq is the national funding foundation for Brazil. CONICET is the funding agency in Argentina, kind of the NSF equivalent. But then we get to put our name on side there, so when you go there, you get to see our name associated with some of these other funding agencies, which I think is kind of a nice thing in recognition. Our connection primarily is with the Brazilian, the McKinsey University. That's where our grant is, and he's the director of this whole facility from the Brazil side. Another area that I mentioned, of course, we have the space sciences and space. This is the one that's the study of the ionosphere, Brazil and Peru. We have we have several scintillation stations, data collection stations throughout Brazil. The 3 that we have where we collect AFRL data is Christmas Island, San Luis, and Quitamarca stations. They collect data and they send it to AFRL Space Vehicles Directorate. Up in Hanscom it was. Keith Groves was primarily the guy that was doing that. He's now, it's now turned over to another. But anyway, this is one of our stations. But the nice thing about this is that with the investment that we're making, we have a connection to this, to EC and scintillation stations and data collection data, and it's a great collaboration and a good project that we tie into, simply because Latin America is a good place to do this kind of research, and it's the location that makes it attractive. This is a project that we're finalizing this year. It's with the Institute of Advanced Science and Technology. I put this in primarily because it is a project that we have with the Brazilian Air Force. This is a Brazilian laboratory. This is up to a Mach 25 shock tube. And so they have a very nice facility. They have 3 shock tubes there. And we had 2 projects there, one with Matad Birkin, and led by Matad Birkin and John Schmizer, where we studied laser-induced air breakdown or plasma flow in hypersonic states for kind of an air spike, and also for the study of plasma flow in laser propulsion. 3 minutes. This is another initiative that we have going, and this is partly because of the location in Chile. We're putting down there, in collaboration with the Air Force Academy and part of their Falcon Telescope network, we're going to establish a telescope down in Santiago, or near Santiago, near the University of La Serena, at a small place called Mamayuca Observatory. And this isn't as big or prestigious as Cerro Tololo, Gemini, or some of the others that are up on top of the Andes, but these guys are collaborators, and we're going to install a simple little 51-inch centimeter diameter telescope. It's a tracking telescope for space situational awareness. We're going to be putting that in Chile hopefully within the next year.
You were going to mention one.
Huh?
You were going to mention one.
Why? Why the telescope? Oh, the mention? One of the reasons why they like Chile, if you look at this slope, and you look at this slope, if we push this over where you got this, one of the reasons why Chile is so attractive is because you can get evening light on the same satellite from both stations, and so you can get an image from from 2 different angles, which is a benefit and an attraction for having one in the southern hemisphere. The benefit of putting this in the to provide access in the southern hemisphere is to get a little more access to some of these images. I want to mention this one briefly. This is a research institution that we've developed a great relationship over the years, and it's in collaboration with the Materials Directorate. We have it's a Research Center for Applied Chemistry in Saltillo, Mexico, and they have done some excellent work, not just doing work themselves, but in the collaboration with our researchers in our Materials Directorate. They've come up with a ferroelectric discovery in nanoparticles as small as 9 millimeters. Up to this point, it's been around 50 to 30 nanometers. They also synthesized a compound which shows liquid crystallinity for these materials are used in photorefractive materials and laser protections and things like that. So these guys have been very good. Dr. Charles Lee has been a great supporter in that, as well as Tom Cooper, Dean Evans in the Materials Directorate. I'm going to go to the next one. This one here is our basic research initiative. What we have here is we have 4 projects. One, we have a U.S. university and a Mexican university. Each institution submitted a joint proposal. The proposals were then selected, and so the Mexican side is funding the Mexicans, the U.S. side is funding the U.S. side, and it's turned into a nice set of projects. And there goes my dinger. So there's the only thing I want to say here is give some acknowledgement. These are the guys that support SOARD down in Latin America. We rely heavily upon the technical expertise of our program managers here. And these are the ones that make SOARD a success in what we do. With that, I'll stop and answer questions.
Okay. Maybe not okay. All right, there we go. Questions? No questions. I guess everybody wants to go on. Oh, you got one?
A natural question, given the center of gravity in Brazil, why be in Chile?
There's political reasons that I can discuss later. It's more political than scientific.